The conference room smelled of stale coffee and antiseptic, a faint hum of the fluorescent lights above adding to the sense of artificial calm. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious to the storm about to break inside a windowless room on the 27th floor. Inside, Elena Ward sat at the end of a long table, her posture perfect but unassuming, her hands folded neatly over the sleeve of her olive-green field jacket. The jacket had seen better days, faded at the elbows, frayed slightly at the cuffs, but the patch sewn onto it was immaculate, almost glowing in the harsh fluorescent light. A group of new contractors, freshly out of boot camp or off some corporate training track, were clustered at the other end of the table. Laughter bounced off the walls, a little too loud, too forced, like they were auditioning for the role of confident adults. At the center of it all, Brady Klein, tall, broad-shouldered, arrogance practically radiating from his designer cologne, noticed Elena's sleeve. He squinted, smirk forming. "What's this? Some kind of Girl Scout badge," he said, leaning forward without invitation. His fingers hovered over the patch, tracing its outline. Elena's gaze flicked to him, not sharp, not hostile, just steady, controlled, like she could stop him before he even realized he was moving, but she didn't, she let him. "Don't," she said softly, a single word that carried more weight than the laughter bouncing off the walls. Brady chuckled, ignoring her. "Relax, it's just a patch. Can't be that serious, right?" He tugged at it slightly, trying to peel it back to read the embossed letters underneath. That's when the air changed. The room went silent. Even the background hum of fluorescent lights seemed to pause, caught in the tension. Elena's hands moved slowly, deliberately, but not fast enough to stop Brady. And then the patch peeled back just enough for him to see it. The gold emblem glinted in the harsh light. The room collectively held its breath. The Navy SEAL Trident. A single symbol, but one that carried the weight of decades of training, sacrifice, and death. Brady froze. His smug smirk faltered. The other contractors, unsure of what they were looking at, shuffled uneasily in their chairs. The veterans in the room, silent, almost invisible in their presence, recognized it instantly. Their eyes widened. Elena rose slowly, every movement deliberate. She wasn't angry, not exactly, but there was a quiet intensity in her that made everyone lean back instinctively, as if the air itself had thickened. "You really shouldn't touch that," she said, calm, cold. The words were almost casual, but the subtext rattled everyone. Brady laughed nervously, but it was brittle, hollow. "Hey, No," Elena interrupted, her voice like ice sliding across steel. She stepped closer to the table. "You have no idea what you just touched." The veterans exchanged glances. Older, grayer men whose faces had seen too much. Their lips tightened. One of them muttered under his breath, "God help him." Elena let her gaze sweep the room slowly, landing on each person in turn. The younger contractors shifted uncomfortably. Brady's grin had evaporated entirely, replaced with an almost palpable fear. He could feel it prickling up his spine, the kind of fear that didn't come from being yelled at or disciplined, but from instinctively knowing that someone in the room could, and would, destroy him without hesitation if they wanted to. "I earned this," she said quietly, touching the patch. Her fingers lingered on the gold stitching for a brief moment. "It's not decoration. It's a reminder of everything I've survived, and everything I've lost." Brady opened his mouth. He wanted to apologize or at least cover for his mistake, but no words came. His throat felt thick, like someone had shoved a wet cloth down it. A soft click of heels echoed against the tile floor as her supervisor, a middle-aged woman with a presence that could command a room without raising her voice, approached. She looked at the patch and then at Elena, nodding slightly. Elena gave a brief nod back, almost imperceptible, but enough to confirm something unspoken between them. Brady, still standing, stared at the patch as if it had suddenly morphed into something alive. The gold trident wasn't just an emblem. It was history, honor, blood, and sacrifice sewn into fabric. And somehow, he knew he had violated it. "You don't just mock this," Alina continued, her voice low, almost a whisper, yet carrying a weight that made the laughter from earlier feel like a distant memory. "Some people fought and died to wear this, and now you've touched it. You have no idea what that means." The words hung in the air. Every eye in the room followed Alina as she slowly removed the patch from her sleeve and held it up. The light caught it just right. Every line, every ridge, every detail of the gold embroidery shimmered. One of the older veterans finally spoke, voice hoarse and low. "You weren't supposed to see that. Not here, not now." Brady swallowed. He could feel the sweat prickling along his temple. His bravado had dissolved completely, leaving only a young man realizing he had underestimated something, or someone, far beyond him. Alina placed the patch back on her sleeve, securing it carefully. Her hands were steady, but there was a tremor in her jaw, a quiet testament to the memories she carried, memories of desert heat, sand and smoke, gunfire and loss. She sat back down, folding her hands neatly over the patch as if tucking it safely away from the world. The silence stretched on, unbroken. The contractors who had laughed and joked now looked like they had seen a ghost. Brady stared, eyes wide, chest tight. He had no idea who Alina Ward was or the magnitude of what she had survived, but suddenly he realized mocking her had been a mistake, a very dangerous mistake. Alina tilted her head slightly, observing the young man. "Some things," she said softly, "aren't meant for your amusement." Her eyes were calm, but they were also unyielding, like two polished blades. Brady felt something crack inside him, an understanding that he had stepped into a world he didn't belong to. The hum of the fluorescent lights returned, the air settled again, but the energy had shifted irrevocably. Alina had made her point. She had reminded everyone in that room that she was not just another face in a corporate training seminar or office hierarchy. She carried a past, one that could crush ignorance without effort. Brady looked at her, swallowed hard, and muttered, I didn't." Alina didn't answer. She didn't need to. The message had been sent. He had been warned. And for the first time in his life, he understood that some symbols, like the gold trident on Alina Ward's sleeve, weren't just patches. They were history. They were blood. They were warning signs. The room exhaled collectively as Alina sank fully into her chair again, calm once more, but with something deeper lurking behind her eyes, a storm waiting for the right moment to break. And in that moment, nobody in the room could have predicted the chain of events that would follow. Because Brady's mockery had done more than offend her. It had awoken a story that hadn't been told in years. A story of survival, of betrayal, of missions that were never truly over. And Alina Ward, with her trident patch gleaming under the fluorescent lights, was about to step back into it. The room, unknowingly, was now holding its breath for what was coming next. The conference room had quieted to a nearly religious stillness. The earlier laughter, the clinking of coffee mugs, the faint hum of fluorescent lights, all of it had vanished. The gold trident patch on Alina Ward's sleeve seemed to glow in the sterile light, as though it were a beacon of some history nobody dared touch. Brady Klein still sat frozen, his hand twitching nervously on the table, like he was physically trying to undo the moment he had just desecrated. Alina's gaze swept the room, eyes calm but piercing. She let the silence stretch a beat longer than necessary, letting everyone feel the weight of what she was about to say. "That patch," she began softly, voice steady, but carrying the gravity of an untold storm, "belonged to someone who didn't make it back." The words landed like a hammer on stone. Brady's mouth opened and closed several times, but nothing came out. Even the older veterans in the room, a group who had seen combat, death, and betrayal, shifted in their seats. They knew that tone. They had heard it in the middle of sandstorms, in the back of helicopters over enemy territory, and during whispered confessions in the middle of chaos. The voice of someone carrying the ghosts of the battlefield. Alina inhaled, steadying herself, though her hands twitched ever so slightly over the trident patch. She wasn't angry. Not exactly. But there was a cold, sharp edge to her posture, a kind of controlled danger that made even Brady, with his city boy bravado, feel exposed. "My team," she continued, "we were on a mission 5 years ago that went wrong, worse than wrong. Operation Black River." The mention of the operation name caused a subtle ripple in the room. The older veteran stiffened, recognizing the words whispered in secrecy by those who had been there. Black River wasn't a mission name you tossed around casually. It was classified, dangerous, and burned into memory with a mixture of pride and pain. Brady shifted in his seat. He had no idea what Operation Black River was, but he could see the effect the words had on the veterans. His stomach knotted. "We were ambushed," Alina said, her voice calm but controlled, the kind of calm that came from knowing death was always 2 steps behind you. "Our team leader, Chief Petty Officer Mark Kincaid, he took the hit meant for me. He shoved me behind cover before the blast even registered." The room went colder. A shiver passed through the contractors, untrained in the language of war but able to recognize its unmistakable echo. Brady felt his chest tighten. Alina's eyes seemed to flicker backward in time, recalling heat, dust, sand in her mouth, and the chaos of gunfire. She swallowed, her jaw tightening. "The last thing he did before he bled out was rip his trident patch off and press it into my hand." The veterans in the room shifted slightly in their seats. They had all seen patches pressed into trembling hands. They had all heard last words, whispered in sand, in blood, in chaos. The weight of responsibility, the last orders, the promises you never forget. "He looked me in the eyes," Alina said, voice dropping lower, almost reverent. "And he said 3 words. I didn't understand them then, but I've never forgotten them." Brady leaned forward slightly, compelled despite himself. What were they?" Alina's eyes swept the room. She looked at Brady directly. "They're not done." The silence that followed was absolute, the kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes your heartbeat deafening. Brady felt it in every nerve ending. The veterans exchanged glances. They knew what she meant. Some of them had lived through the aftermath of incomplete missions, ambushes, betrayals, and rogue operations. The kind of missions the government officially denies. Before anyone could ask another question, the door to the conference room opened. A knock, sharp and urgent, sliced through the tension. The sound wasn't casual. It wasn't polite. It carried authority and danger. Every person in the room instinctively froze. Brady could feel the air thicken around him. A tall man in a black suit entered. Federal badge gleamed against his chest. His eyes scanned the room with a predatory precision before settling on Alina. "Ward," he said, voice clipped. "We need to speak. Now." Brady's stomach twisted. He had never seen someone, the woman he had mocked moments before, command attention without raising her voice. Yet Alina's response was measured, calm, almost imperceptibly tense. Alina stood, the patch gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "What is this about?" she asked quietly. The agent's gaze never wavered. "There's been a breach, Black River." The words hit her like a hammer to the chest. She felt her pulse spike, adrenaline surging through her veins. "No," she whispered under her breath. "Not them." The agent nodded solemnly. "Something resurfaced. We need you." Brady's jaw tightened. He had no idea who them was or what it meant for the woman before him, but he could feel the panic creeping in among the veterans. They had known. They had understood instantly. Alina's eyes scanned the room one last time. She stopped at Brady, locking gaze. "Be careful what you joke about," she said quietly, voice low but sharp. "Some of us have bled for the things you laugh at." Then she turned toward the agent, moving to the door. Brady felt a mixture of awe and fear. He wanted to follow, to understand, to apologize, but instinct told him not to. Not yet. As the door clicked shut behind her, the weight of her words hung in the air. The Trident patch seemed heavier now. Brady's eyes fell to it instinctively. He reached for it, curiosity, guilt, and fear mixing in his gut. But one of the veterans caught his hand. "Don't," the man said quietly. His tone wasn't anger, it was warning, respectful, cautious, deadly. "That patch, that symbol isn't just metal and fabric, it's a memory, a promise, and it's not yours to touch." Brady pulled back, his mind racing. He had mocked, he had laughed, he had underestimated someone, and now he realized he had stepped into a world he didn't belong to. The room exhaled collectively, the tension easing only slightly. The younger contractors slumped, looking anywhere but at Alina, who had returned to her seat, hands resting lightly over the patch. But behind her calm exterior, her mind was racing, recalling every detail of that fateful day. The heat, the smoke, the roar of explosives, the screams of men she could not save, the weight of Kincaid's last words pressing into her like a living thing. Brady swallowed. I didn't," he started. "You didn't what?" Alina asked softly. Her eyes held his, unflinching. "Understand what it costs to earn this, to survive this, or to carry it forward." He shook his head. Words failed him. He was suddenly a child caught in the gravity of something far beyond his comprehension. Alina touched the patch lightly, as if drawing strength from it, grounding herself in the memory of those who had gone before her. Brady could see it now, not a decoration, not a mere piece of fabric, but a living testament to survival, sacrifice, and promise. One of the veterans leaned forward. "She's telling you everything you need to know without saying a word," he murmured. "Respect it, learn it, and pray you never have to face it yourself." Brady's fingers clenched into fists. The laughter, the arrogance, the mockery, it all felt distant now. He had glimpsed the edge of something real, something dangerous, something unrelenting, and he didn't like what he saw. Alina leaned back, her hands over the patch, eyes distant but alert. The storm behind her calm exterior was barely contained. She was ready, always ready. And now, because of a single careless action, everyone in that room had been pulled, unwillingly, into the orbit of her past. And though no one spoke it aloud, Brady felt the unspoken truth. This wasn't just a story about a patch. It was about blood, survival, and a mission that wasn't finished, one that could rise from the past at any moment to claim everything in its path. The room sat in silence. The fluorescent lights hummed, and outside the city continued, unaware that within these walls history and danger had just been awakened. Brady Klein had touched the patch, and in doing so he had touched a story that was far from over. And Alina Ward, she was about to make sure no one, not even him, would forget it. The hallway outside the conference room was sterile, bright, and yet somehow suffocating. Every step Alina took echoed sharply against the tile floor, accompanied by the soft tap of the agent's shoes behind her. She didn't glance back at the conference room. She didn't need to. She could feel the weight of their eyes on her back. Young Brady Klein, who had mocked her only minutes ago, sat frozen, staring at the empty chair where she had been. "Alina," the agent said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was clipped, professional, but there was an edge to it, a tremor that hinted at urgency. "This isn't routine. We have a situation that ties directly back to Black River." Her fingers tightened briefly around the strap of her satchel, hiding the slight tremor from the agent. Black River had been buried deep in classified files, locked in memory, and sealed behind layers of government bureaucracy. No one, not even the people in this building, were supposed to talk about it. "I know," she said quietly, eyes fixed ahead. "What happened?" The agent hesitated, then exhaled sharply. "We received intel that someone is actively seeking the Black River archives. Names, locations, evidence that was never meant to resurface. Whoever it is, they have resources, training, and the intent to finish what was started." Alina's jaw tightened. Memories clawed at the edges of her mind, the desert heat, the stinging sand, the echo of gunfire and screams she could never forget. She whispered. "It's them. They're back." The agent gave her a measured look. Then we need you on the ground. Now, you were the only survivor, Ward. You know what they're capable of." Her heartbeat quickened. She had survived Black River, yes, but survival didn't erase the ghosts that lingered, the weight of the men who hadn't made it. Chief Petty Officer Mark Kincaid's face flashed in her mind, the way he had shoved her behind cover, the fire in his eyes as he made sure she had a chance to live. And then the memory of the patch pressed into her hand, the last words he whispered. "They're not done." She exhaled slowly, steeling herself. "Take me to the site." The agent nodded, his face grim. "Before I do, tell me everything you can remember, every detail of that operation. It's the only way we can predict their next move." Elena hesitated. Operation Black River was classified at the highest levels. Talking about it could compromise national security, but she also knew the stakes. Whoever was resurfacing had already started moving. Silence wasn't an option. She recounted the mission slowly, her voice even but heavy with memories. "It was supposed to be a reconnaissance and extraction mission in the Kargan province," she began. "Our target was a rogue private network operating deep within enemy territory. Intelligence had suggested they were moving sensitive information, data, personnel files, assets, names that shouldn't exist outside their inner circle." The agent's eyes narrowed. He already knew fragments, but he needed the details only Elena could provide. "We inserted at night," she continued. "Helicopter, low altitude, blackout approach. Everything was silent, too silent. My team, we noticed movement before the landing zone, but it was too late to abort. That's when they hit us with the ambush." She paused. The memory was sharp, cutting, painful. Her voice trembled slightly, but she swallowed and pushed forward. "Explosives, automatic fire, my team reacted immediately. Kincaid, he pushed me down behind cover before the first blast. The rest, they didn't make it." The agent's jaw tightened. He had seen loss, but hearing it recounted in such intimate detail brought it home. Elena's gaze flicked to a window overlooking the city. "I survived," she said quietly, "barely, and when I did I took Kincaid's patch. He pressed it into my hand and said, 'They're not done.' I didn't understand it then. I thought we were finished. I thought we could bury the mission, the bodies, the secrets, but apparently I was wrong." The agent exhaled sharply. "We've confirmed activity at several locations tied to Black River, and your patch," he glanced at her sleeve. "It's symbolic, yes, but it's also a key. There are coded microetchings on it, coordinates embedded into the gold stitching. Only someone with your clearance and experience could decipher it. Whoever has that patch now has a direct link to every hidden file we buried." Elena's stomach tightened. The patch had been safe, or she had thought it was. But the thought that someone had been tracking it, waiting for her, made the hair on her neck stand on end. "Who could do this?" she asked, voice low but sharp. The agent's eyes darkened. "Someone who survived Black River. Someone who knows exactly what that patch means and what you know." Elena's mind raced. There had been whispers after the mission, rumors of a surviving enemy operative who had escaped capture, someone who had knowledge of Kincaid's team's movements. She hadn't believed them at first, but now the pieces fit. "They've found me," she said, almost to herself, "and they're coming for the patch." The agent gave a curt nod. "Exactly. And if they succeed," he paused, "the intel in that patch could destabilize operations, endanger lives, compromise national security." Elena's jaw clenched. She had carried the burden of survival for years, but now that burden was no longer hers alone. Innocent lives were at risk. The men she had served with, the contacts she trusted, the agents on the ground, they all depended on her. "We move immediately," she said, voice steady. "I need the coordinates, the layout, any intel you've got on potential targets. If they're using the patch as a key, we don't have time to lose." The agent nodded, handing her a tablet loaded with classified maps, encrypted files, and satellite images. "We've marked the primary locations," he said. "Secondary targets are harder to pinpoint. Whoever's orchestrating this is meticulous, trained, dangerous. Alina scanned the data quickly, her eyes catching patterns, potential choke points, probable extraction routes. Everything she had learned in her years as a Navy SEAL, the instincts, the tactical knowledge, the ability to anticipate moves before they happened, kicked in. She paused, noting one particular pattern. "They're moving fast," she murmured. "Faster than intelligence predicted. If they've already accessed the patch, they're closer than we think. Too close." The agent's face darkened. "That's why we need you now. No waiting, no hesitation. You're the only one who can anticipate their moves." Alina's hands hovered over the tablet. She felt a familiar fire ignite within her, the same fire that had kept her alive in Kargan province, that had kept her moving when every instinct screamed to stop, to give up. She was ready, always ready. "Let's go," she said finally. The agent nodded, signaling for security to clear a path. As they moved down the sterile hallway, Alina's mind replayed every detail of the mission. The ambush, Kincaid's sacrifice, the faces of the men who hadn't made it. Her chest tightened at the memory, but she drew strength from it, letting the ghosts of her past sharpen her focus. "We're dealing with someone who knows you," the agent said quietly, almost as a warning. "They know your tactics, your habits, your weaknesses." Alina didn't flinch. "Then we'll use it against them." A cold, hard determination settled over her. She had survived Black River once. She had carried the patch through years of quiet, burying memories that were too heavy to hold. But now, the past had found her, and she wasn't going to let it take her, or the patch, or anything else without a fight. As they reached the armored SUV waiting outside, Alina caught a glimpse of the city through the glass doors. It seemed calm, ordinary, peaceful, but she knew better. Danger didn't announce itself. Danger was patient, and right now it was coming for her. She slid into the back seat, hands tightening on the edge of the seat. The agent followed, closing the door with a precise motion. The city sped past the window as the SUV roared into motion, but Alina's mind was already on the mission ahead, the unseen enemy, and the patch gold, gleaming and carrying secrets that could kill. And she knew, with a certainty that chilled her blood, that the moment they found her, everything would change. The only question was whether she would survive it again. The SUV rolled quietly through the city streets, engine purring with a deceptive calm. Outside, the skyline gleamed under the afternoon sun, office towers reflecting glass and steel like the teeth of some indifferent giant. Inside, the atmosphere was anything but calm. Alina Ward sat rigid, eyes scanning every reflection in the windows, every shadow that flickered across the glass. Her fingers rested lightly over the strap of her satchel, the only thing between her and the black leather case holding the patch, the gold trident. Her heartbeat thumped like a drum in her chest, each beat a reminder that the past she had survived wasn't done with her. The federal agent riding beside her didn't speak. He didn't need to. He had been trained to read the signs, and he could see them all, the taut muscles, the sharp glances, the barely contained tension. He knew Alina Ward was always ready, and that whatever came next, she would meet it head-on. Finally, the agent broke the silence. "We've secured a perimeter near the first location. The target is one of several sites tied to Black River. Surveillance indicates movement, armed, coordinated, and precise. Whoever's behind this isn't improvising." Alina nodded without looking at him. Her mind was already working through possibilities. She had been here before, in the sand, under fire, making split-second decisions that meant life or death. The difference now was that the battlefield was closer to home, and the stakes had shifted. "You're sure about the intel?" she asked, voice calm but firm. He exhaled. "As sure as it gets without boots on the ground, but they're fast, too fast for standard protocol, that's why you're here." Her jaw tightened. "Then we move immediately." The SUV slowed as they approached a nondescript office building on the edge of the city. Nothing about it suggested danger, No police cars, no cordon, no flashing lights. To the untrained eye, it was just another glass and concrete structure, a piece of urban monotony. But Alina's instinct screamed otherwise. The agent parked, cutting the engine. He turned to her. "This is it. Entry point is secure, but stay sharp. If they're after the patch, they won't hesitate, and they're not alone." Alina's fingers brushed the case again. She had trained for years to react without thinking, to anticipate moves before they happened. Every lesson, every scar, every memory from Black River coalesced into a single thought. They were coming for her. The SUV doors opened and she stepped out. The air was ordinary, suburban warmth, distant traffic, but her senses were alive. She moved forward with the agent, every step deliberate, scanning reflections in the glass, shadows along the walls, the subtle movement of leaves in the wind that might indicate surveillance. Inside, the building smelled of stale air and industrial cleaning solution. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The lobby was empty except for a single receptionist, typing furiously at a computer. Alina's presence went unnoticed. She didn't want it to be known. The agent led her to a side door marked employees only. He keyed in a code and the door clicked open. Beyond it was a narrow corridor, fluorescent lights flickering slightly, casting long shadows along the beige walls. "Stay close," he whispered. "This area is cleared, but clearance is temporary. They could appear at any moment." Alina nodded, scanning every corner, every reflective surface. She had been ambushed before. She had lost men before. She knew the cost of overconfidence. They reached a small conference room, stripped of any personal touches. The table gleamed under the harsh lights. A single monitor sat at the far end, displaying feeds from hidden cameras placed around the building. Alina moved closer, eyes narrowing. "They're here," she said quietly. She could see it on the screens, movement in the shadows, precise, coordinated, almost predatory. The agent leaned over her shoulder. "Yes, and they're moving towards the archives. We estimate 5 minutes before they reach the main vault. Your patch is the key." Alina's stomach tightened. She hadn't realized until now how fast things had escalated. 5 minutes wasn't much time at all. Suddenly, a knock at the door startled both of them. Hard, urgent, deliberate, the kind of knock that doesn't ask for permission. Alina froze. The knock wasn't human, at least not ordinary. It carried authority and danger, calculated pressure, like someone confident in their ability to break in if they had to. The agent's hand moved subtly toward his firearm. "I'll handle it," he said, voice low. But Alina stepped forward, hand raised. "Wait." The knock came again, louder this time, echoing through the empty hallway. Alina's eyes narrowed, every muscle in her body tensed. This was no casual interruption. This was a challenge, and she knew it. Whoever was behind this knew she would be here. They knew the patch existed, and they wanted it. The door handle rattled. Someone was trying to force entry. "Damn it," the agent muttered. "They've got tools." Alina didn't flinch. She reached into her jacket, pulling out a compact tactical knife. The gold trident on her sleeve caught the light, gleaming like a warning. She moved toward the door, listening. The sound of shuffling feet, soft but deliberate, indicated more than one intruder. Brady Klein, if he had been here, would have fainted, but Alina didn't hesitate. She placed her hand on the door, ready to push it open at a moment's notice. Her mind was working 1,000 calculations per second. Angles, possible exits, potential threats, timing. Every instinct she had ever honed in the military screamed at her. The door swung open abruptly. A man in a black hoodie stepped in. Gloved hands, precise, calculated. Every move suggested training, discipline, lethal intent. He paused mid-step, scanning the room. His eyes caught hers, and for a heartbeat, recognition flashed across his features. Alina didn't flinch. She raised the knife, positioning herself for defense, and spoke calmly. "You've made a mistake." The man's eyes narrowed. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached inside his jacket, producing a device, small, metallic, almost like a scanner. He aimed it subtly at her patch. Alina's pulse quickened. He was trying to access the micro-etched coordinates, the very thing Kincaid had entrusted to her. "You don't know what you're touching," she said evenly, but inside adrenaline surged. This was more than a test. This was a threat. The man moved faster than she expected, lunging with precise intent to seize the patch. She reacted instinctively, sidestepping and using her knife hand to push him off balance. The man stumbled, caught himself, and adjusted immediately. He was fast, trained, deadly, but Alina was faster. The agent moved, drawing his weapon, but Alina shook her head. "Not yet. Let him come to me." The man recovered, circling, every step calculated, every move designed to gauge her reaction. Alina mirrored him, fluid, controlled, waiting for the perfect moment. Then, without warning, the man lunged again, more aggressively this time. Alina pivoted, using his momentum against him, sending him crashing into the table. Papers flew into the air, a metallic clatter echoing through the hallway. The agent moved to secure him, but Alina's eyes caught something, a subtle glint of gold under his sleeve. Another patch. No, too small, too new. This was Kincaid's, this was something else. Someone had been tracking her for years, learning, waiting for the right moment. She realized with chilling clarity, the man at the door wasn't acting alone. He was the first wave. The storm was coming. The intruder regained his footing, eyes locked on hers, and for the first time Alina felt that chill, the same she had felt during Black River, the same that had haunted her dreams for years. He knew her. He knew the patch, and he wasn't leaving without it. Alina took a deep breath, steadying herself. Every instinct, every memory of survival, every scar of Black River surged forward. This wasn't about survival anymore. It was about finishing what had started years ago, and she would not fail. The intruder's hand twitched toward the device again. Alina's knife moved in perfect synchronization, a flash of steel that stopped him mid-motion. And then the lights flickered. The room plunged briefly into darkness, shadows stretching and twisting. When the lights returned, the man had vanished. The door hung open, a slight breeze ruffling the papers on the floor. Alina's heart pounded. Whoever had sent him knew exactly where she was, what she was protecting, and how to get to it. The agent exhaled. "That wasn't luck," he muttered. "They're organized, they're coming back." Alina's gaze fell on her sleeve. The gold Trident patch gleamed under the fluorescent lights, a symbol of survival, sacrifice, and warning. Whoever was hunting her wanted it. And now she understood the terrifying truth. The storm wasn't approaching. It was already inside the building. She tightened her grip on the knife, moving toward the archives. "Then we make sure they don't get it," she said. Her voice was calm, but every word carried the weight of a woman who had survived death itself. And she would not let the past take her again. The countdown had begun. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long, jittering shadows across the narrow corridor of the archive wing. Alina Ward's eyes flicked from shadow to shadow, every muscle taut, every instinct screaming. The intruder who had appeared moments ago wasn't gone. He had simply vanished to regroup. She adjusted the strap of her satchel, feeling the weight of the gold Trident patch pressing against her chest. That small piece of fabric carried secrets, coordinates, and the lives of men who had sacrificed everything. And now, someone was willing to kill to take it. The federal agent moved beside her, weapon drawn, silent, efficient. "They've triggered something," he said softly. His eyes darted to the corner where the security panel blinked erratically. Sensors indicate movement near the main vault. Multiple entries breached. Alina's jaw tightened. She had trained for ambushes, for firefights, for moments like this, but the city office building setting was a cruel twist. No sand to cover herself, no natural cover to obscure her moves, just glass walls, fluorescent lights, and echoes that carried danger with every step. She crouched slightly, scanning the hallway, the faint hum of electronics masking the subtle creak of approaching footsteps. Her breath was measured, controlled. Every fiber of her being was alert. Suddenly, a sharp clatter echoed from behind a stack of filing cabinets. Alina pivoted, knife ready. Two men in black tactical gear emerged, moving swiftly and silently. Their eyes were covered, but their intentions were clear. The patch was the target. Without hesitation, Alina lunged. Years of Navy SEAL training flooded through her like muscle memory. She ducked under the first man's swing, using his momentum to push him into a wall. The second man lunged for the patch, and she twisted, driving the knife into his forearm just enough to force him back. The agent moved simultaneously, neutralizing the first man with precise, calculated movements. Bullets weren't necessary. This was about efficiency, control, and survival. Alina's heart pounded, but she didn't lose focus. She had survived death before. She could do it again. But the attack was escalating faster than she had anticipated. These weren't ordinary operatives. They were trained, coordinated, and relentless. She ducked behind a filing cabinet as another intruder appeared, armed with a compact submachine gun. The man fired, bullets pinging off metal and walls, forcing her further into cover. The sound was deafening in the narrow hallway. Every instinct told her to run, but retreat would give up the patch, and that was not an option. Alina's mind raced. Every strategy she had ever used in combat was running in tandem with her immediate observations. She noted the angles, the distance, the doorways, the reflective surfaces. She needed a diversion, something sudden, unexpected. Her eyes caught a fire extinguisher mounted to the wall. In one fluid motion, she yanked it free and swung it at the nearest man, hitting him squarely in the helmet. He staggered back, giving her the opening she needed. She darted toward a side door leading to the utility corridor. The agent followed, covering her as they moved, but more operatives emerged from a service entrance, cutting off their path. Alina's stomach tightened. She was being corralled. "Trap," she muttered under her breath. "They knew we'd come this way." The agent's voice was calm but urgent. "We need to hold them off long enough to secure the patch." Alina's mind was a storm of calculations. She knew the building's layout from the intel, but these attackers were professionals, moving faster than expected. They had rehearsed, anticipated her moves. That meant there was only one way to survive and succeed. She ducked into a maintenance closet, slamming the door shut just as bullets splintered the wall where she had stood moments before. The agent followed, checking the hallway briefly before securing the door with a heavy brace. Inside the closet, Alina's breathing was steady but rapid. She adjusted her satchel, ensuring the patch was secure. Then she checked the device on her wrist, an encrypted communication link directly to command. They needed extraction, but extraction was impossible until the immediate threat was neutralized. The intruders didn't know she had the patch secured yet. That gave her the advantage, but only briefly. Seconds later, the first of them tried the door. They kicked it, testing its strength. Alina shifted silently, ready to strike the moment it opened. The door burst inward. Alina moved like lightning, knife flashing, striking at the first man's wrist. He yelped, staggering back into the second intruder. The confined space worked in her favor. Every movement counted. She drove them back, step by step, cornering them against the far wall. Then came the sound that made her blood run cold, a sharp metallic click. Her eyes flicked to the back of the closet, where a small explosive had been placed, rigged, timed. Whoever had said it knew she would use this closet as cover. "Agent," she hissed, recognizing the device. He glanced at her, realization dawning. "Move," he shouted. Alina yanked the agent with her as the timer reached its final seconds. The explosion ripped through the closet, the shockwave knocking them off their feet and sending a fireball of debris into the narrow corridor. Smoke and dust filled the air, the acrid scent of burning insulation stinging their lungs. Coughing, Alina scrambled to her feet, the patch still secure beneath her jacket. The agent was beside her, brushing dust from his shoulders. Both knew they had narrowly survived, but the intruders, at least some of them, had vanished into the chaos. Alina's heart raced, but she didn't pause. She knew this was only the beginning. Whoever had sent these operatives wasn't stopping. They wanted the patch, the coordinates, the secrets, and now they knew she was alive and aware. She moved toward the main archive vault, careful to avoid further ambushes. Every shadow, every flicker of light was a potential threat. She could feel it, the predator's eyes somewhere nearby, tracking, calculating, waiting for the right moment. The agent kept close, weapons ready. "They're testing you," he said quietly. "They want to see how fast you respond, how far you'll go to protect it." Alina didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the vault door, gold trident gleaming faintly under the overhead lights. She had survived Black River. She had lost men, endured impossible circumstances, and come back. This patch wasn't just a key. It was a symbol of everything she and Kincaid's team had sacrificed, and she wasn't about to let anyone take it. A shadow moved near the entrance to the vault, a figure dark and silent. Alina froze, then lunged. Knife flashed, a blur of motion honed by years of combat. The figure stumbled but was quickly replaced by another and another. The corridor had become a funnel, forcing her into a deadly choreography of attack and defense. Each step required split-second decisions. One wrong move, and the patch, the lives it represented, would be compromised. Explosions, gunfire, the crash of metal and glass, all blended into a chaotic symphony of survival. Alina's focus sharpened, every sense heightened. She moved with lethal precision, striking, evading, and countering with the fluidity of someone who had been forged in the crucible of war. And through it all, the patch remained secure, pressed close to her chest, a reminder of the promise she carried, the promise of survival, and the warning to anyone foolish enough to underestimate her. As the corridor fell silent for a brief, tense moment, Alina exhaled slowly, knowing this was only the beginning. Whoever had orchestrated this attack wasn't done. The storm wasn't just outside. It had followed her inside the walls, inside her life. And the gold trident patch, shining under the fluorescent lights, was the target that would ignite the next phase of the battle. Alina Ward straightened, eyes blazing with determination. The intruders would come again. They always did, but this time she was ready. And she would not fail. The air in the archive corridor was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burned electronics. Fluorescent lights flickered, casting erratic shadows on walls scarred from the recent confrontation. Alina Ward's breathing was measured, her stance fluid, every muscle primed for movement. The gold trident patch beneath her jacket pressed against her chest, a symbol, a key, a memory of men who had not survived. The agent at her side scanned the hallway, weapon raised, eyes flicking from shadow to shadow. "They're organized," he muttered. "More than we expected. This isn't just an attack, it's a coordinated operation. Someone has a plan, and we just walked into the first stage." Alina's gaze hardened. "Then we find out what stage 2 looks like before it's too late." They moved cautiously toward the vault, each step deliberate. The corridor, now littered with debris, offered little cover. Every movement made the echoes of their steps bounce ominously. Somewhere nearby, they could hear the faint whir of motors and distant voices, operatives moving, coordinating, communicating in low, clipped tones. "This way," the agent whispered, signaling toward a maintenance stairwell. Alina followed, sliding her knife back into her jacket. The stairwell smelled of concrete dust and industrial grease. It wasn't glamorous, but it offered options: vertical movement, temporary concealment, and a chance to flank the attackers. They reached the bottom, emerging into a service tunnel that connected to the building's lower floors. Alina's eyes narrowed as she examined the layout. Multiple access points, narrow corridors, surveillance blind spots perfect for an ambush. But she had trained for ambushes. She had survived worse. Then came the first clear signal of the enemy's intent. The lights along the tunnel flickered and went out entirely, plunging the corridor into darkness. Elena's pulse quickened. Her hand instinctively went to her tactical flashlight, flicking it on in a controlled sweep. Shadows danced along the walls. The faint click of boots echoed from the far end. "They're here," the agent whispered. Suddenly, a voice rang out, amplified through hidden speakers. "Elena Ward, we've been waiting a long time for you." The words were calm, measured, yet dripping with menace. Elena felt the chill of recognition. The voice was familiar, not from Black River itself, but someone who had emerged from its shadow. Someone who had survived when they shouldn't have. "Show yourself," Elena said, voice low, controlled, every syllable carrying authority. A shadow detached itself from the darkness. The man moved with deliberate precision, his features finally visible, a lean, calculating figure in tactical gear, eyes cold and unflinching. He held a device, a scanner aimed subtly at her jacket. Elena's stomach tightened. That small device, aimed at the patch, could unlock every secret she had fought to protect. "You've kept the patch close," the man said, voice smooth and chilling. "I underestimated you once, never again." The agent raised his weapon. Elena shook her head. "Wait, let him come to us." The man advanced slowly, deliberately, each step measured, each movement silent. This was no ordinary operative. This was a predator trained to track, to anticipate, to eliminate. And he knew her tactics. Elena's mind raced. She considered the options: engage directly and risk exposing the patch, or maneuver strategically and force him into a trap. She opted for the latter. She motioned to the agent, indicating a narrow service alcove. "We lure him in," she whispered. The man hesitated, scanning the corridor. Elena moved subtly, creating a visible but deceptive path. He followed, cautious but determined. As he entered the alcove, Elena sprang from her position, knife flashing in a controlled arc. He reacted, deflecting, but she forced him into the tighter space where his mobility was restricted. The agent moved quickly, restraining the intruder, weapon ready to neutralize the threat if needed. But the man wasn't acting alone. Elena caught movement behind the agent. Another operative crouched low, attempting to flank. She pivoted, striking with her knife, forcing the second man back into the shadows. The hallway erupted into a chaotic exchange of movement, strikes, and muffled shouts. Through it all, the patch remained secure, pressed against her chest. It wasn't just a piece of fabric. It was the fulcrum of everything happening now. The enemy wanted it, needed it, and they were willing to escalate to lethal force to get it. The first operative struggled, restrained by the agent, but he managed a sudden twist, striking the agent with a hidden baton. The agent staggered, forcing Elena to react instantly. She struck, using precise leverage to incapacitate the man without allowing him to reach the patch. Then came the unexpected. A sharp mechanical hum echoed through the corridor. Small drones, equipped with sensors and weapons, emerged from vents and corners, sweeping the tunnel. They weren't just after the patch, they were gathering data, relaying positions, coordinating attacks. Elena's eyes flicked over the drones, calculating angles and weaknesses. She grabbed a nearby metal pipe, swinging it at the first drone, knocking it off course. Sparks flew. The second drone advanced and she reacted again, striking it with the blade of her knife. The agent recovered, taking down the restrained operative. "They're coordinated," he shouted over the chaos. "Not random, someone's controlling this." Elena's jaw tightened. "Then we find the source." As the drones fell, sparks scattering across the concrete floor, another voice boomed from an overhead speaker, distorted and mechanical. "The patch belongs to us, Ward. Hand it over and we may let you walk away." Elena's blood ran cold. The voice wasn't just a threat, it was a promise of intent. Whoever controlled this operation had the resources, the patience, and the ruthlessness to pursue her relentlessly. "We're not giving it to you," she said, voice firm. Her fingers tightened around the patch beneath her jacket. "You can try, but it won't work." The sound of footsteps echoed from above. Reinforcements were descending, heavy, coordinated, deadly. Alina and the agent moved to a nearby stairwell, using vertical movement to gain advantage. The drones scanned below, their sensors sweeping, but the stairs gave them cover. At the landing, Alina paused, taking stock. The operative they had restrained was no longer a concern. The drones were neutralized, but the storm wasn't over. The main controller, the mind behind this attack, remained at large. Whoever it was had anticipated her moves, understood her tactics, and now was orchestrating a full assault. Alina glanced at the patch, gold glinting faintly in the flickering stairwell light. It had survived years, wars, and betrayal, and it would survive this. The agent looked at her, eyes wide but trusting. "What now?" Alina's gaze hardened, determination blazing. "Now," she said, "we take the fight to them. They want the patch, fine, let's make them earn it." The stairs seemed to descend endlessly, each step echoing like a drumbeat heralding battle. Alina adjusted her grip on the knife, ready to strike, ready to survive, ready to protect the symbol she carried above all else. Because the patch wasn't just gold and thread, it was a promise, a memory, and anyone who thought they could take it from her would learn, in the hardest way possible, that Alina Ward survived Black River, and she would survive this too. The city outside remained unaware, indifferent, ordinary. But within the walls of this building, the war had already begun. And the storm was only gathering. The stairwell emptied into a dimly lit service corridor. The air was heavy with smoke, acrid from the drones and explosives earlier. Alina Ward moved with surgical precision, each footstep silent but deliberate. The agent stayed just behind her, weapon raised, scanning every shadow. The gold Trident patch pressed against her chest, a constant reminder of what was at stake. The corridor narrowed, forcing them into a single-file advance. Alina's mind raced, running through every possibility. Whoever had orchestrated this assault had resources, training, and most dangerously, intimate knowledge of her tactics. Ahead, a faint red glow pulsed from a partially open door. Alina's instincts screamed. That was the source, the center of the operation. Whoever controlled the drones, the operatives, the explosives, he was there, waiting. She signaled to the agent to halt. "We move together, precision," she whispered. "No mistakes." The agent nodded, eyes sharp. "Understood." Alina pressed herself against the wall, sliding toward the door. Her hand rested lightly on the knife at her belt. The glow from inside the room reflected off metal surfaces, casting angular shadows. She could hear voices, soft, mechanical, distorted over some amplifier, but the content was garbled. Someone was monitoring, coordinating, controlling. Alina inhaled, steadying herself. She counted down silently in her head, 1, 2, 3, and then pushed the door open. Inside, the room was stark, industrial, filled with monitors, wires, and equipment humming softly. The glow emanated from a central terminal, a mass of blinking lights and screens showing surveillance from the building. At the center, seated in a high-backed chair, was the mastermind. Tall, lean, and composed, he exuded calm menace. His eyes flicked to Alina immediately, and a small, cruel smile touched his lips. He leaned back, hands steepled over his chest. "Ah," he said smoothly, voice cold and controlled. "Alina Ward, the survivor, I wondered when you'd come." Alina's knife was ready, but she didn't move yet. "You've caused enough chaos," she said evenly. "Step away from the patch and maybe you leave here in one piece." He chuckled softly, a sound devoid of warmth. "The patch? You think it's just a symbol? It's far more than that, my dear. Coordinates, intelligence, secrets buried years ago, it's the key to everything. And now it's finally within reach." Alina's jaw tightened. "You don't know what it takes to survive what that patch represents." He tilted his head, studying her. "Oh, but I do. That's why I orchestrated this entire operation. Every move, every drone, every operative, it was all designed to flush you out, to test you. And now, finally, I have you here. Alone." Her fingers tightened around the patch beneath her jacket. Years of training, years of survival, and memories of Black River surged forward. This man had survived where he shouldn't have, an enemy she had assumed long dead. But assumptions were dangerous. The agent behind her shifted slightly. Alina gave a subtle shake of her head. She had this. This wasn't about brute force. It was about precision, anticipation, and exploiting weakness. "You've underestimated me before," she said softly, stepping closer. "And you will again." The mastermind's eyes narrowed. Bold words. Let's see if you can back them up. With a sudden movement, he pressed a button on the terminal. The monitors flickered, and a hidden panel in the floor slid open. From below, two more operatives emerged, armed and moving with lethal precision. Alina's eyes flitted to the agent. He read her expression immediately, understanding without words. This was a test, a trap, but they weren't walking blindly into it. She lunged first, knife flashing in a blur. The first operative went down, but the second returned fire, bullets ricocheting off metal and concrete. Alina dove behind a console, narrowly avoiding a spray of gunfire. The mastermind rose smoothly from his chair, stepping forward. His movements were calm, deliberate, and unnervingly confident. "You've survived wars, Ward, but you'll find this different," he said, voice measured. Alina rose, blade in hand, eyes locked on him. Every instinct screamed danger. Every calculation pointed to one truth. The patch must stay with her. Everything else was expendable. She moved quickly, darting toward him, knife raised. He sidestepped with fluid precision, motioning subtly. Two drones, previously hidden, emerged from vents above, scanning her movements. Alina adjusted, using a nearby console as cover. Sparks flew as she kicked a metal panel toward the drones, short-circuiting them. One drone fell, smoking. The other adjusted midair, but she anticipated it, driving a sharp kick into the wall to create a temporary barrier. The mastermind smiled thinly. "Impressive, but you're still predictable." Alina's eyes narrowed. He underestimated her adaptability, her ability to turn the environment to her advantage. She lunged again, this time feinting left, then spinning right, striking at his wrist. He deflected, but the distraction was enough. She closed the distance, knife at his throat. "Step away," she hissed. "No more games." For a heartbeat, he froze, studying her. Then, with a fluid motion, he pressed a hidden device on his wrist. A sudden explosion rocked the room, an EMP pulse that knocked out all electronics, plunging them into darkness. Alina stumbled but retained her balance. The agent shouted, "Ward status." She gritted her teeth. "I've got him." In the pitch black, movement became a deadly game of senses. The mastermind lunged, knife glinting briefly in the residual light. Alina countered, using leverage, training, and instinct honed over years of combat. Their movements were a deadly dance. Attack, parry, evade, counter, each moment carrying the weight of life and death. A brief scuffle sent the mastermind stumbling backward into a support beam. Alina pressed her advantage, knife poised over him. "Stay down," she commanded. He laughed softly, a sound devoid of fear. "You think this ends with me," he whispered. "This is only the beginning. Black River isn't over, and neither am I." Before she could respond, a sharp metallic clang echoed from the ventilation shaft above. Another operative dropped down behind her, attempting to seize the patch. Alina spun, striking him with the handle of her knife, sending him crashing into the wall. The agent moved swiftly, neutralizing remaining threats. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of their controlled breathing. The mastermind was on the ground, pinned but alive. Alina pressed the patch against her chest, fingers tightening. She looked down at him, voice cold and unflinching. "This patch represents survival, sacrifice, men who didn't make it, and you'll never have it." He smirked faintly, defiance in his eyes. "You've won for now, but there are always more waiting, always." Alina's jaw clenched. "Then we'll be ready every time." The agent secured the room, calling in extraction. The patch remained hers, untouched, untaken. It gleamed under the flickering emergency lights, gold and resolute, carrying the weight of history and sacrifice. Alina exhaled slowly, tension leaving her shoulders in waves. The storm had been weathered, but the memory of Black River, the ghosts of her past, and the threat of the mastermind lingered. This battle had been won, but the war, personal, psychological, and deadly, was far from over. As they exited the building, Alina's gaze lifted to the city skyline. Ordinary, indifferent, unaware. But it didn't matter. She had survived. The patch remained hers, and she would continue to survive no matter the cost. Because some promises weren't negotiable. Some symbols weren't just fabric and thread. They were life, memory, and the unbroken will to endure. And Alina Ward had survived Black River, and she would survive this too. The city skyline shimmered in the fading evening light, oblivious to the chaos that had erupted hours earlier within the walls of the office building. Alina Ward stood on the rooftop of an adjacent building, the gold Trident patch beneath her jacket pressing reassuringly against her chest. She exhaled, letting the weight of the mission and the night settle for just a heartbeat. The extraction team had secured the mastermind, along with the remaining operatives. They were en route to a high-security facility, where their interrogation would uncover the depth of the conspiracy surrounding Black River. But Alina knew better than to assume the end was permanent. Survival had taught her that threats lingered long after the immediate danger had passed. The agent at her side broke the silence. "They'll pay for what they did," he said, his voice steady but tinged with exhaustion. Every operative, every drone, every device traced back to him. Alina's eyes scanned the streets below, alive with ordinary life. Taxis weaving through traffic, pedestrians hurrying along sidewalks, unaware that a war had raged only hours ago in their midst. She couldn't let the patch fall into the wrong hands. Not now, not ever. "They underestimated what this patch represents," she murmured. "It's not just coordinates. It's survival, sacrifice, a reminder of what we owe to those who gave everything." Her mind drifted briefly to Kincaid, the man who had pressed the patch into her hand years ago. His words had haunted her ever since. "They're not done." He had been right. But now, Alina had taken control of the narrative. She had turned the hunter into the hunted, and the patch remained unbroken, untaken, unyielding. A faint vibration on her wrist drew her attention. She tapped the device and saw an incoming encrypted message from command. "Mastermind contained. Further investigation underway. Return to base." Alina exhaled slowly, allowing herself a rare moment of relief. She had survived ambushes, drones, explosions, and trained assassins. She had survived Black River, and now she had survived this. But there was no time for complacency. She turned to the agent. "We need to ensure there's no loose thread. Any operatives still in the field need to be tracked. The patch can't fall into anyone's hands ever again." The agent nodded, already in motion. Alina's gaze drifted toward the mastermind, still secured below, his eyes glinting with defiance. Despite the evidence, despite the failure of his plan, there was something unnerving about him, an aura of patience, a long-term strategy that hadn't been fully revealed. "I want a full debrief," she said, voice sharp. "Every name, every location, every piece of intel he touched. If there's a link we missed, we close it, permanently." The agent gave a curt nod. "Understood." For a brief moment, silence enveloped them. The city hummed beneath the rooftop, indifferent to the lives and conflicts hidden within its walls. Alina allowed herself a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline finally ebb. She unbuttoned her jacket slightly, letting the Trident patch catch the last rays of sunlight. Its gold threads gleamed, a reminder of endurance, honor, and survival. Every scratch, every burn, every fold in that patch told a story of sacrifice and resilience. A small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. For years, the patch had been a secret, a personal reminder of the mission she had survived, the comrades she had lost, and the promise she carried. Now it was a symbol, a beacon that no one could erase. But just as Alina allowed herself a moment of calm, her instincts flared. A shadow shifted on the rooftop across the street. She pivoted, knife ready, eyes scanning every line, every reflective surface. Nothing, just the city. Her pulse slowed and she reminded herself. Not every shadow was a threat, yet she couldn't afford doubt. Years of survival had taught her the difference between instinct and paranoia, and tonight, instinct remained razor-sharp. The agent's voice broke the momentary silence. "We're clear for now. The mastermind is contained. Extraction teams are moving in." Alina nodded. She knew, however, that containment was only temporary. The enemy had been clever, methodical, but cleverness wasn't enough to defeat someone who had faced death and kept moving. She adjusted the patch once more. It had survived fires, gunfire, explosions, and assassination attempts. It would survive the years ahead, just as she would. Her gaze softened briefly. The faces of fallen comrades flashed through her mind, the men and women she had served with, whose sacrifices had ensured her survival. Kincaid, Torres, Simmons, all pressed into her memory like ghosts guiding her. The patch was a tribute to them as much as it was a tool. A sudden chime on her wrist drew her attention again. Another encrypted message. "Unknown operative detected near safe house. Coordinates sent. Proceed with caution." Alina exhaled slowly, letting a small chuckle escape. The storm wasn't over. It never truly was. But now she was ready. Every step she took, every move she made was calculated, prepared, and deadly precise. The agent looked at her, a silent question in his eyes. Alina smiled faintly. "Let's go," she said. "The patch stays with me. That's the only promise I won't break." The two of them moved toward the edge of the rooftop, shadows stretching behind them. The city lay sprawling below, unaware of the battles fought in its veins, indifferent to the lives saved and lost. As they descended, Alina felt the weight of history, survival, and duty all converge. This mission had tested everything: skill, instinct, endurance, and willpower. And yet, standing tall, the patch secure, she felt a rare sense of closure. Not final, there would always be threats, but victory nonetheless. The mastermind's plan had been thwarted, operatives neutralized. The patch remained a symbol of resilience, courage, and the lives of those who had given everything. Alina's mind lingered on one thought. She had survived Black River, survived the ambush, survived the storm, and survived the hunter. And the gold Trident patch, it had survived with her. As she stepped into the waiting armored vehicle, the city lights reflecting off its surface, Alina allowed herself a deep, steadying breath. The night was long, the war ongoing, but she had earned this moment of triumph. Some battles never truly end, but survival, honor, and vigilance ensured the story continued. The vehicle pulled away into the night, Alina's gaze fixed on the skyline. Somewhere out there, enemies still lurked, waiting, but she would be ready. Because some symbol, some promises, could never be broken. And Alina Ward, survivor, warrior, and protector of the Trident, had proven that tonight. The patch gleamed faintly beneath the city lights, gold against darkness, a beacon, a memory, and a warning. No one would ever take it from her. The story ended here, for now, but the legend of survival, courage, and the gold Trident patch would endure.